You've clicked onto this video for one reason and for one reason only. You're stood over on that par 5 and you're hitting that second or third shot into the green where a 9 or 3 wood isn't really the clubs that's needed to be hit well. It is the hybrid. To have this club as an asset as opposed to a liability, it requires you understanding these 3 simple things. And for those of you golfers who play on a regular basis, I recommend sticking around to the very end because I'm going to be revealing a really good tip to help you use these clubs out on the golf course. These are the top 3 hybrid mistakes you seriously must avoid. So kicking things off with the first thing, which is the ball position. 9 out of 10 golfers, taking into account online and in-person coaching, have all come to see me when they've started hitting hybrids have been from the front of the stance, when this is wrong. Just because it's a very sort of 3-wood-like driver look, a lot of golfers need to have the ball positioned, think they need to have the ball positioned very far forward in the stance, very similar to a driver setup. A lot of golfers will then wonder, well, why am I thinning the golf ball? When in reality, the hybrid has a very similar, if not the exact same low point position as a long iron. That is obviously going to be after the golf ball of an iron because we want to hit the ball, then turf after. And because of this, we're always going to thin the golf shot. So I would highly recommend having the ball position with a hybrid in between the middle of the stance and the lead heel. So somewhere in between there, which is going to make things a little bit easier for you to get that ball, then a little bit of turf interaction that we're looking for on these golf shots, and you'll find striking the golf ball so much easier to do. The second most common thing I tend to see, and this is just from looking out on the golf course when I've been playing, is that a lot of golfers, when it comes to hitting the hybrids, they try and hit the ball too well. And let me explain this. Obviously we're trying to hit the ball well anyway, but we have a tendency of actually trying to purposely strike that golf ball first. And with the intention of doing this, this can cause quite a few flaws in the swing that we don't really want to occur, especially a steeper angle of attack into the golf ball. Now, I can tell this is the case because a lot of golfers will tend to have that massive crater of a divot after they've hit the golf ball. It goes too low and they're thinking, why on earth has that gone too low? I'm hitting a hybrid. Well, in this case, I would certainly recommend, if you're that type of golfer that's really struggling with this, I'd recommend just taking a few practice swings, just like a chipping swing, and encouraging the bottom edge of the club, this part here, very similar to the bounce of the club on the wedge, to brush the ground as opposed to digging into the ground like so. We just want to brush the turf like so. To keep things simple, I always like to use this for chipping, butt end of the club pointing towards the belt buckle. So you could think of that same interpretation as you're going through these little swings before hitting the golf ball, and you should find this so much easier to get that better strike, that better ball and turf interaction, but also see the higher ball flight. The third and final mistake I've noticed, this is also playing out on the golf course and at the driving range. I've noticed this, where the shaft angle is at address. So when I say shaft angle, I just mean where the club is positioned at address as opposed to the ball position where the club is positioned. So a lot of golfers will have the hands too far forward, and some golfers have actually had them a little bit further back like this here, but the majority have had them too far forward like this here. And you can see just from this video here right now how much an effect that has on the club face angle at the address position. So if I forward the hands like this, it can encourage me to close the club face and reduce the loft on the club. And if I do the opposite and bring the hands further back, you can see there that the club face opens. So not only is this going to affect the strike, but it's also going to affect the direction. Starting direction, and probably see curvature. If we have the tendency of having the hands too far forward, we're going to see the golf ball go too low and probably veer off to the left. And if it's too open, we're going to see them go a little bit too high and veer off to the right. So it's really important that we're just allowing ourselves to set the club down using this bottom edge as well to ensure that that's fairly flat, exactly flat to the ground in this position here. And I just like to make sure I'm doing this, I like to use this tip for the driver as well, just for you to take note of, is that I'm just going to use my trail hand just to let the club sit like so with my palm like this here. So now I can take my stance and then I can ensure that the bottom of the club here is flat to the ground, and this ensures that I've got that square club face at address. So finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, the bonus tip. And that is, a lot of golfers don't really take into account the course conditions. It's really important that when you head out onto the golf course and you're faced with certain shots, you are hitting the right club. Taking into account things like wind, terrain, lie, all play a huge impact on the overall results of the golf shot. And if you're taking a club like a hybrid just because it helps you get the ball higher and get it close to the green, then fair enough. But if you're faced with a massive side wind, taking a hybrid isn't going to be the number one option. Taking something like a long iron, although it will be harder to hit, will give you a more consistent outcome, that lower ball flight that's required, and to get it rolling along the fairway, which is why I've created this video over here for you to watch.